All right, we're back. Nice cold start. I've got an issue with the alternator, I have determined. When it kicks in, the throttle position sensor gets wonky. It doesn't read quite correctly, which is kind of strange. Armstrong steering. See, at 15 position throttle position sensor. Shut that off. See, the alternator is not charging, but it's working right now. Now the alternator's charging and I'm at 13% and it's not idling terribly well. I may have to change that alternator out or reroute some wires because I disconnected it the other day and that worked properly. And then I jacked around with it and it worked properly for a little while, but it seems to be doing the same thing. The log shows it immediately happens as soon as the alternator fires off. I think I may have a bad connection or two, or it just may need a different alternator. This is an old school one wire. It's not really routed near any of the wires, but it's obviously doing something because, again, shut it off. It runs a lot better when it knows that the throttle is actually at 0. Because if the throttle is above 0 or above 2, the idle air control doesn't work, and then it gets all sorts of screwed up. As you can see, it's much smoother. See, now it's working, even though it's charging. So, something going on with the alternator. I'm gonna have to play with that. But right now, shut her off so not to get it too hot. Right now, I've gotten some more parts and thought I might be going hunting this weekend because muzzleloader season in Arkansas, where we hunt, starts Saturday. But my overachieving wife, who is actually the one who wants to hunt, I'm not really a big fan. I do it because she likes it. But she has managed to get a severe non-COVID respiratory infection and then topped it off with a case of shingles. So she's rather miserable right now. She's doing okay. I have some antivirals and stuff like that. Hopefully get that going, get that fixed. But looks like I may have this weekend off. And the local track has started running on Sundays now. So I've got a cutoff switch for the electrical, and I'm going to try to get it mounted, see if I can get it with the push on that comes out one of these notches, maybe this one because it'll keep the wires kind of short, and we'll see if we can get that installed and maybe get this thing to the drags just for random poop and laughter. So I'm going to go get the parts, spread them out in here, see what we can do. Alright, so here's the switch. It's all kind of cattywampus, but it's basically on and off. You turn it right to on, turn it off, so it has to be set up where you push off. So this I hope to somehow run out through here. Probably have to drill a hole in that back plate, get the rod through it, which would be nice because that'll actually support it. But yeah, I mean, depending on where I mount it, I can always cut this off a bit because this is a little bit long. And I think I want to mount it on the frame rail somewhere, but we will see how that works. I guess it can go pretty much any direction. This way, and this thing here, the switch itself can be flipped around on the bracket. So we're going to sneak under the car and see what we can find. Alright, well, an obvious place to mount it would be about right there. But I really don't want it that close to the main fuel line. Now, if I paid attention to how the fuel runs on this thing, this would be backwards, but I'm an idiot, so this is what we have. So I think what I'm going to do, since I got plenty of wire, I may be able to use this hole. Oh, that'll be kind of cool. I don't want to keep my stuff next to my fuel line. I'm going to run two 12-volt wires right through that hole, but that's okay, because I think I'm going to put it over on this side, about like that, which will let me shoot for that notch right there. And there's nothing over here in that corner to get fiddled with. I can just poke a little hole through here for the handle, and I think that'll work. So I think I'm going to take that apart and figure out how I want to mount this thing, because that's probably going to work pretty well, and it's going to clear all sorts of stuff. Yep, I think that's what we're going to do. All right. Check the continuity. It is hooked up correctly. Pull is on, push is off. I'll probably cut this back a little bit because it doesn't need to be that extra 2 inches sticking out there, and I'm probably going to put a little grommet or something through the little hole I made in the frame because that ended up bigger than it needed to be. But that is going to work. And it will pass tech. So I believe that's going to be enough for tonight because it's getting kind of late. So I think I may run the wires down through there, snake them over, tie wrap them around, or attach them, and this will be pretty well done. That's not a bad little setup. It's not ideal. This is just a real, probably a cheap version of a flaming river switch. It's supposed to have just a handle on it with a push with a roll pin in it. So they put an Allen screw all the way through it. So flocking A. Anyway, that's kind of cheesy. You can rotate it about. You can turn the switch itself 4 different ways, and this can be flipped up and side down and backwards and forwards to try to get it to where it'll work. It's okay. I can't say that I'm too happy with the stud because it's got an elastic stop nut that doesn't engage the elastic. So, not quite sure what I'm going to do there. I don't like that. That has the potential to vibrate off. So it will certainly work, and I think it'll be good enough, but I may end up looking for a different ball stud or ball end there. See what I can do. Actually, I mean, I can suck up the threads on that thing a little bit too, and take up some of the length out here. That probably might knock off about 3/4 of an inch, and I'm probably going to do that after I finish filming this. But this is going to work. I think that's going to be good, and then we are effectively ready to try to get this thing down the track. So, there you go. We'll pick up the wiring tomorrow. Alright, next day. Haven't done much to it right now, but what I have done is disconnected the charging wire from the alternator. This is a pretty old school GM one-wire self-exciting alternator, and the wire does go over and run down the passenger side of the intake manifold to get down to the starter. It's not right on the throttle position sensor, but it goes under it, about 4 inches. So we're going to see if disconnecting that wire fixes the throttle position sensor for now. We obviously need charging, so something else has to be done, but I want to confirm that. I tried it the other day, it seemed to work, so we're going to try it again. Now that's perfect. Should not be sticking at 5% there. It's kind of disappointing. We got to figure this out. Get it out of the garage. Side pipes kick up a lot of dust. Yeah, that's not good, because when that's above 2, the idle air control doesn't function properly. So, not sure what's going on here. I'll leave it run for the moment. You know, it re-zeroes itself every time you start the car. So, it shouldn't come off 0. Now we'll see if the IAC is going to function. Yeah, because it's cold, so it's doing what it's supposed to do based on temperature. Once it gets up to 160, it's going to be down idling where it's supposed to. But if I crack that throttle, it's going to go to 20%, because that's where it stays once the throttle's open. And if that throttle doesn't get down below 2%, it will not function. I'm just going to go hook up the battery. I have no idea. I think I am going to try to reroute that wire just to see if it becomes more consistent. I'm going to run just a jumper from the alternator all the way back to the trunk outside of the car to test it and see what we can have here. Right now it appears to be functioning properly. If nothing else, I need to open the throttle blades a little bit because it needs to be, the IAC should be at 10 when it's idling, and it's where it needs to idle right now. And it's at 160, so we're going to crack the throttle blades a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good right there. It's supposed to be between 2 and 10%. Still at 1. We can see that it's functioning properly now. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but I'm going to rerun that alternator wire just for giggles anyway. So that's what we're doing now. Not my best work, but it should prove, hopefully, whether that matters. And if it does, then I will reroute that wire. I'm probably going to do it anyway, just because I'm confused about this whole thing. So let's see what happens. That may have been it. We are charging good, and it's not hanging at 1 or 2 or anything even, it's just there. I think I'm going to have to reroute that wire. Oop. Interesting, and now we're actually idling a little low. Well, we're idling high actually, so I gotta go back that thing out. Temperature is good. Let's do some adjustment again. Nice. I think that's it. All right. Well, I guess that's what I'm going to endeavor to do. Is rerun that wire. Get it away from all of these sensors, which is really strange. But probably because this is an old school noisy alternator, that could be my problem. That's what I want to see. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Alright, well, I got the alternator completely separate, run all the way to the back on its own, away from everything. I actually separated the power wire to that thing to its own, and it's better, but it's not perfect. So the alternator hooked up. Now, I'm going to hook up the alternator. And see if when I rev it, if that thing moves. But this, you know, now it's going to like 4. Yep. All right. So it's at 0 yet. Still at 0. It's something about when that thing energizes. If you have to rev the throttle while the alternator is energizing itself, it's still at 0. Let's see. Yeah, it seems like because right now it won't energize on its own until you rev the throttle. If you have to rev the throttle to energize it, it unzeros itself. Let's see what happens. Alright, 0, not really charging. The 1 is still tolerable, but it shouldn't move at all. Yeah, I'm going to have to come up with some other alternator that's not a 1-wire. But I got one on the drag car, and I think I got one in my box. Let's try those. A little pretty chrome, but chrome don't get you home. So we're going to have to figure that out. That's annoying. And now it's still working. It's better. But it's not perfect. Okay. Let's see. There's the fan. I say, where is the fan? All right, there's the fan. RAC is at 8. That's good. Right where it's supposed to be. There it goes. See how it's stuck at 8 now? See, that'll never let it idle properly if it thinks the throttle position sensor is the throttle's open. I know it's not. So I'm gonna go disconnect the alternator and then rev it and see if it goes back to 0. What are the odds? Nope. Once it unzeros itself, you're screwed. Yep, something's going on with that alternator. It's throwing noise. So we're gonna have to change that alternator out. All right, well, that'll be what we do next. Whew, this thing's kicking my butt. I may have it. Ugh. Started out the morning, pulled the alternator off, and put this one on, and it wasn't charging. But the stupid thing still did its trick, even with that alternator not charging. Like, damn it, I thought the alternator was broke, so I put the other alternator back, and it wasn't charging. And then I realized I hadn't connected the wire to the battery in the back. So but in the meantime, I had gone through and I disconnected and rerouted a whole bunch of wires back here, and I moved the coil wire around to get it away from every wire possible. Cleared the spark plug wires around some stuff. This rat's nest, I moved it out, just got it away from everything, got it as far from the spark plug wires as possible. The only thing I got going near the plug wires now is this, which I can eventually move. away like that, and that is just the, I mean, it's power and ground, and then fuel pump control. So I'm going to do that. It's getting tough, but I think I may have it at this point. I did finally hook up the wire to the battery, and after I gotten all that stuff moved, it was kind of working even with the old alternator, but it was still going up and sticking at about 7 or 10 or 15 or whatever. So I pulled the old alternator off, put this one, which was on my race car, which is, good lord, I don't know, that's from the 90s at least, but it's another one wire. The difference with this one that I've always remembered is where, if you recall, I had to rev it to get the chromy one there to excite and start charging. Even though this one has a larger pulley on it and is spinning slower, it excites immediately when you start the car. It does not need to be revved up to excite. So something is different between this alternator and that other one. So I put it on, tested it. It seems to be happy now. It's kind of staying at 0. No real issues, more revving, whatever. It's doing what I think it should. So now I'm going to slowly go back through it and tie wrap my wires as best as I can to get them, just to keep them away from all of the high voltage stuff. Kind of tough with that monster coil being in the back there, and then the plug wires are kind of snug and tight around everything. But I think we're getting it. But this is tricky. I can see why people get a little frustrated with these things when they're trying to put them on older cars, which is, I mean, the main application for this thing. Because you've never had to deal with your electrical system this finely, and this new computer-controlled stuff really needs to be isolated, apparently, from any kind of interference. So I still may end up going with a multi-wire alternator with a diode and all that other stuff just to get the best possible quiet alternator that I can. But now I'm going to try to tie all this mess up. You know, these wires don't do anything yet, but I need to probably, once I get the second fan in and get that run, I need to de-pin those, take them out of the connector and just save them, because they're just potential antennas for this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's tweaky. This is really, really tweaky. So I'm going to start tying all this stuff back together and see if that helps, if it kind of corrects the problem. But boy, this is tweakier than I had expected. I can see why people get frustrated with it if you're not used to handling these computers. It's a different type of troubleshooting. Because look, I mean, this is the sensor that it's messing with, and that's nowhere near anything. Nowhere. I mean, the wires come out here and go into the plug, must do something. But you know, I know they don't. I mean, they're just all internal to the computer, because it just comes out and goes to the handheld for readings, as far as the CAN bus goes. But man, this is it's more difficult than I had expected to get the noise out of this system. But I think we're making progress. I'm not ready to throw it out the window yet. Well, I'm not going to do that anyway. We're going to keep going until we get it. But hoping it stays decent and we can still maybe make it to the track tomorrow, because the weather has just turned. It is about a 50-degree dew point. Finally, it's nice and dry. Front move through. Would have been good hunting weather, but it's pretty nice right now. So we're going to keep poking at it, get this stuff tied back up and cleaned up so it's not going to flop all over the place. And then I need to get my big wires installed for the switch in the back. So on we go. Alright, well, everything is tie wrapped out of the way. Stuff is a little further. What a mess. It's hard to hide stuff in a car like I will fix that blue wire once I put the second fan in, because there's going to be another trigger wire running with it. That's all going to get coped eventually. Oops, got another tie wrap takeoff down there, but everything is about as far away from the ignition as I can make it. And so, let's see what we got. Oh, goodness. See how that just charges right off the bat? See where my idle air control is. It's a tick high right now, but it'll do. It's very close. Go back to here. I think we may have it. We may be going racing yet. Let's see where the idle air control is. Alright, I gotta tweak that just a little bit. Just a little bit. But throttle position sensor finally seems to be playing nice. Thank goodness. Wow, that was something. Okay, well now we're gonna get back to putting the damn wires on the switch. Alright. Well, that piece, well, that is done. Switch works. Got her all wired up. Got the alternator landed right there on the battery side. Got everything tied away from the fuel lines. Screwed down. So far, this is the longest it's gone with me playing with it, that the throttle position sensor hasn't screwed up. So I think we're about ready to take it for a drive, see if we can do some learning before we go to track maybe tomorrow. See if she'll fire up. Yep. Switch works. Charging right off the bat. Idling good. Throttle position sensor is perfect. I think we're good. Cool. Hopefully that's the end of this video. So, see you all on the track. Take care.